Did it record?
You're recording.
Okay, it didn't do the thing though.
Yeah, I didn't hear.
It says it's recording.
You're right.
What have we done? Meanwhile, all right, Job. So we did Proverbs, and the basic thought of Proverbs is live long and prosper. Do what we say, and you'll live long and prosper. Okay, fine. It's spot, the whole 9 yards. And then we have several books that say, yeah, but. And Job is one of those books. Yeah, but. And we're going to talk about it. And then we'll talk about Song of Songs. Job is, well, you have your Bibles. Look how Job is laid out in your text. Here's Job 1. And you just go, okay, we're talking about the way it's laid out. Well, look, this is all straightforward. I'm just scrolling down through chapter 1. Chapter 2, more of the same. Nothing. But when we get to chapter 3, things are different.
Don, can you share the
It's
screen?
laid out on the page different.
Don,
What's
can you
going
share
on?
the screen?
That's because chapter 3, and actually 3 through 42, is poetry. 1 and 2 are prose, hence they're laid out like this. But chapter 3 is poetry. Let the day perish on which I was born, and the night that's said. So notice the day, night, these parallel terms. Classic Hebrew poetry. And it works out that in the 42 chapters of Job, chapters 1 and 2 and chapter 42 are in prose. Everything else is poetry, which gives you pause. You know, oh. Okay.
Don,
First of all, people don't talk in poetry. Further, in this story, let's do an outline of Job. Wait, I need to share my screen so you guys can see it. It's kind of a, oh, let me get rid of that. Prologue. You get this story setting up the whole book. It's in prose. But then we get a series, the whole book switches to poetry. And it does it through a series of cycles where you have in the first cycle, for example, however you spell cycle, you have Job speak, and then Eliphaz, his friend, speaks. Cyclib Job. Let's try that again. Wayward fingers. Job again. Bildad. What? Job. Zophar. Those are the three friends of Job. And they alternate speaking with Job. And you go, okay. And then we do it again. And it's the same thing. And we're in chapter 20 by this point. Third cycle. It's a slight different here. Instead of Zophar's speech, we get a poem on wisdom from Job. And then Job speaks again. And you go, okay. Then we get Elihu. I don't know how many of you actually have read Job. And you know there's that guy that shows up out of nowhere. That's Elihu. And all he does is repeat everything his friend said. You just go, why? Okay. And then you get the Lord speaking. Job speaks. Then the Lord speaks again. Then Job. And then we get the prose epilogue. Which is chapter 42. Roughly. So what's odd about this is these are not short little discourses. Job's first speech is all of chapter 3. That's its first speech. Eliphaz is 4 through 5. And then Job speaks again, and it's 6 through 7. Bildad, chapter 8. Job again, 9 through 10. And then Zophar's, chapter 11. That's the first cycle. Now, I bring this out for 2 reasons. Because it helps to identify what the genre of Job is. Because people don't talk like this. When was the last time you had a conversation where it was actually a series of poetic monologues, where you sat there and spouted off for 10 minutes? And it was in poetry. People don't talk like that. So whatever's going on, Job is not intended to be read as history. This is not Kings. You understand that? And so you go, huh? Things that make you go, huh? Let's see if we can dive into the book itself and get a further hint as to what it is. So the opening verse of Job I'm going to translate it to bring it home. Once upon a time in the land of Uz, there was a man named Job. That's how I translate it. And what's that tell you when I do it like that?
Fairy tale.
It's not, it's literary at the very least. This is not a true story. Okay. And it starts off classically like a parable. Unlike most parables, though, but not all of them, the main character's name. That's usually not the case in a parable. It does happen. The rich man and Lazarus is his name. But notice the rich man isn't. He's generic. So we get this story. There was a man in the land of Uz named Job. That's what it is. I'd go, once upon a time, in the land of Uz, there was a man named Job. Because it sets the stage. You know, all right. And that man was blameless, fair or upright, and feared God and turned from evil. Very high praise. Very, very high praise. Who's speaking here? The narrator. And in the narrator is always truthful. That's just the way we tell stories. Because if the narrator is not truthful, stories don't work. So you assume the narrator is true. So what do we know about Job? He's blameless. He's fair or upright. fears God, and he turns from evil. That's pretty powerful stuff. So Job is a good guy. All right. And 7 sons were born to him and 3 daughters. 7 and 3. Those numbers, yeah, okay. And he possessed how many thousand sheep? 7,000. And how many thousand camels? So there's the same 2 numbers again. 500 yoke of oxen, 500 donkeys, and a lot of servants. Even by today's world, this is rich. Okay, that's a lot of stuff. So he's a wealthy man. So much that he's the greatest of all the people of the East. Notice how generic it is. The East. Where? We don't know. The East. Land of Hoots, wherever that is. All right. His sons used to go to hold a feast in each house on his day. Talk about birthday parties. His sons would throw birthday parties. And they'd invite the 3 sisters and they'd eat and drink with them. Have they done anything wrong? Not so far. And when the days of the feast had run their course, Job would sin and consecrate them. He would sanctify them, make them holy. And he would rise early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For he said, it may be, not they did, it may be that my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. We don't know this. Job doesn't know this. But just in case, I'm going to do this. And thus he always did. Thus Job did continue. So we get what sort of picture painted of Job? What? Okay, what else?
Consistent.
Well, he's blameless, upright, fears God, and turns from evil. Here's an example of it. Even though there's no evidence of any wrongdoing, just in case, we'll cover it. Okay, fine. Then we get the story. Verse 6. One day, the sons of God came to present themselves before Yahweh. Now that's got to be unpacked. Who are the sons of God? Surely by now you know who the sons of God are. It's supernatural beings. Okay? The members of the divine council. Psalm 82:1. The divine council, God's royal court. He's a king and he has a court. And these are the members of them. This is angels, this is seraphs, this is cherubs, this is the watchers. Includes humans as well. They're part of God's divine council. And the members of that are called the sons of God. And it says Satan, but it's actually got a definite article on it. That's what that is that I've highlighted. So it's the Satan. The adversary would be a better translation. Let's see. Yeah. And the adversary came among them. Now, this is a job title and not necessarily a specific person, though it could be a specific person. The adversary was also among them. Okay. And he seems to have a job function of playing the devil's advocate. Interesting, since we consider him to be the devil. But when somebody's presented before the king, he's going to throw a counter argument to make sure the king is considered all possibilities. That's the idea. And the adversary has come before the Lord. And apparently we're going to talk about Job. And Yahweh, notice it's a divine name. It's not God, it's Yahweh. Yahweh says to the adversary, where have you come from? And he answered Yahweh and said, look, going to and fro on the earth and walking up and down on it. And then God starts all this. Have you considered my servant Job? First of all, God's doing the talking. So Yahweh's the one doing it. And presumably Yahweh's trustworthy. So we'll assume he is. And notice the title. What does he call Job? What? My servant, Job. Okay. High praise. And then he goes on to repeat what we had back in verse 1. Blameless, upright, fears God, turns from evil. Have you considered my servant Job? There is none like him in the earth. Now, presumably that's true, because it's God talking. He blameless, upright or fair, it's the best way of that. A blameless, fair man who fears God and turns from evil. The 4 things that we had at the beginning. So those get confirmed. The narrator says it and God says it. So we now know something about Job. He's fair. He's perfect. That's what blameless means. And he fears God and turns from evil. Okay. And he's God's servant. And then the adversary, that's his job, remember. Well, does Job fear God for nothing? Of course he fears you. Have you not put a hedge around him in his house and all he has on every side? You're blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. Now pause for a second. What's that sound like? I can't hear you. Well, let's don't quite go there, but you're on the right track. It's what Proverbs says. Do what we say, and you're going to live long and prosper. He's done what they said. He's lived long and prospered. This is why Job is Job. And he's saying, of course he serves you. Look what you've done. Stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he'll curse you to your face. So God sets up the bet, as it were, and Satan, throws down the odds. Okay, fine. And Yahweh said to Satan, to the adversary, look, all that he has, you can touch the prosperity. Only against him, his person, you cannot touch. Don't touch him. So Satan makes a bet. Take away his stuff, and he'll curse you to your face. And God says, okay. Now, who might want to have a say in this? Excuse me, don't I get a say in this? Apparently not. And that's part of the story. Because this is not just. This is not right. There's no reason for Job to get zapped. But he's getting zapped. Yeah, okay. And this is the yeah, but that I was talking about. Do what we say, you'll live long and prosper. Yeah, but we all know people get hit by buses and get hit by meteorites, get cancer. Crap happens. And this is it. So the adversary went out from the presence of the Lord. So far, it's a pretty straightforward story. But it's unjust. So God's not looking good here. You see that, right? There's no way to convert this. People do. The sermons I've heard on them, they completely misconstrue it. No. There's no way to turn this so that Job deserves what he gets. So one day, his sons and daughters were having their birthday parties, drinking the wine in the older brother's house, and a messenger came to Job and said, the oxen were plowing, and donkeys feeding beside them, and the Sabaeans fell upon them and took and struck down the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. There's a pattern to the story. A messenger came and said, and you get this bad news. I alone have escaped to tell you is how it ends. While he was yet speaking, we're going to see this again. Another came and said, the fire of God, lightning, fell from heaven, burned up the sheep, and the servants consumed them. I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was yet speaking, another came. The Chaldeans formed 3 groups, made a raid on the camels, took them and struck down the servants at the edge of the sword. I alone have escaped to tell you. And while he was yet speaking, a 4th one comes. Your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in the oldest brother's house. Behold, a great wind came across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house. It fell upon the young people, and they are dead. I alone have escaped to tell you. So notice the intense repetition. I alone have escaped to tell you. While he's still speaking, I alone escaped to tell you. So that in itself is telling you something. This is parabolic in its shape. So you get these, it's 3 plus 1. It's 3 incidents plus a 4th one, which in fairy tales is pretty common. It's Goldilocks and how many bears? 3. It's groups of 3. And the 4th one is usually the dramatic one, if there's a 4th one. Job's just minding his own business, and all hell breaks loose. And what else would you call this? His kids have been killed. They're dead. Job's fine. The adversary stuck to the terms, but he milked it to the end. Innocent animals, dead. Children, dead. Now, who else is suffering, by the way? They're dead. Well, except the ones that came to him. If there are kids and there's a mom. Job arose, tore his robe, shaved his head, and fell on the ground and worshipped. Said, naked I came from my mother's womb, naked shall I return. Yahweh gave, and Yahweh has taken away. Blessed be the name of Yahweh. What? Who's he blaming? I'm sorry, I'm not reading it that way. I see him blaming Yahweh gave, Yahweh took away. Well, I don't know. We don't know what he's really feeling. He's certainly resigning to it. Not, well, stuff happens. No, Yahweh did this because that's his view of the world. Because Job is the quintessential wisdom person, and God is in control of the world. Nothing happens by accident. And so when crap happens, God's there. Look at verse 22. First of all, who's talking in 22? And what do we know of the narrator? Always truthful. In all this, Job did not sin or charge God with wrong. How in the world does our narrator say that? Well, because he agrees. We know the backstory. God, in fact, is in control. And God did let this happen. And he doesn't charge God with wrong. Wow. Wow. Much better man than I. Did I ever tell you my Job story? Marianne and I Stephanie was just born. We got up to Denver and we're visiting friends. And we're coming back. And we come back to Tulsa. Car broke down the side of the road. Marianne's holding this infant. And the police that was involved. We get the car repaired. We make it all the way back to Tulsa. And we get here. It's late. I forget. I think it's Sunday night. And we walk in, come in through my garage, and we're stepping on the carpet and it's squishing. Squish, squish. Turns out the ice maker had leaked for the 10 days that we were gone, and it flooded the house. So Marianne took Stephanie, went to Owasso to stay with her mom and dad, and I got the joy of ripping up the carpet and starting the drying process of my house. So the next day, I ripped up a bunch of the carpet. I'm not in a good mood. I haven't slept well. And for some reason, I decided to do some yard work. And I mow the yard, and the lawnmower breaks. So I put it to one side. So I get my weed whacker. Okay, I'll do that. So I'm weed whacking and it breaks. In fact, I did 3 things. Somehow I'd become the blower. But so I'm weed whacking the yard. And the engine literally fell off the back of my weed whacker. I stood in my backyard and I literally yelled, "I'm not Job. I'm not Job. What is going on?" And it was a mess. Eventually the house got repaired. Again, there's a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before Yahweh. You know what? We're going to stop here. It's 10:12. We'll stop at chapter 2. We're not done, but he's laying it up. And Job did not charge God with wrongdoing. He is a better man than I. Gunga Din. You know who Gunga Din is. Anybody? Rudyard Kipling, famous poem.
So when it said the narrator is saying he didn't charge God with wrong, but he did, as you point out, blame God. He just didn't say it was wrong, I guess.
Yes. I just said, when God gives, God takes away. God's ultimately responsible. He doesn't say, God did this to me, other than he's responsible. It's an odd thing. It's an odd thing for the narrator saying he didn't charge God wrong. So whatever he did, he didn't go ballistic on him, which I did. I'm not Job. Holding my weed whacker with the engine dangling. That was so odd. So ponder this, and we'll see where Job goes. Any prayer requests? It's good to have Rick and Lori back. Good to have Poppy back. So we're going to stop here. I'm going to stop recording. And I'm going to ask, stop recording.